From the 2012 Southern Kentucky Festival of Books, I'm Barbara Deeb, and we are taking you outside the book. Today we begin things with David Bell. That's Dr. David Bell at Western Kentucky University, who's written a very popular book. It's growing in popularity. It's called Cemetery Girl. We're going to talk more about that. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, I said Dr. David Bell because you are a professor of English, so it stands to reason that you know words and you know literature, and so guess what? You wrote a book. Is that something that you'd always aspired to?
Yes, it is. I wouldn't say it stands to reason that I know a lot about literature and books just because I have that. But yeah, ever since I was a kid, I loved to read. I grew up in a house where everybody read, everybody in the family read, so I grew up reading, and it was just a natural leap to say, I want to write my own book someday. So that's how it started.
So that's how it started, but I was saying you have a grasp of the language, you have a grasp of literature, and so it might make it a little easier to put words to paper. Although we don't put them to paper anymore, do we?
No,
do you have
we
a
don't.
process by which you write?
I try to just write a little bit every day. I try to have a consistent, do a little bit. With a novel, I tell my students if you wrote a page a day, you would have a novel in a year. So I think slow and steady wins the race sometimes. So I just try to do the amount that I can do during the day, in between having a day job as an English professor. So that can be difficult sometime, but then I have summers off, so I can get a lot more work done then.
Now, Cemetery Girl, you referenced the fact that you and your wife will often walk through actually an area cemetery. So did that serve as the inspiration, or how did this book come to you?
The setting really did come early on because I moved to Bowling Green in the fall of 2008, and I live right by Kyriakis Park and Fairview Cemetery, and so I saw that setting. It's a beautiful cemetery and a beautiful park, and I said, how strange that this park and the cemetery are side by side. What a contrast. And so I had to put that setting right into the book, and so the story I had in mind went right into that setting.
Do you believe and subscribe to write what you know?
I think you have to write what you know, but I think at the same time, I tell my students you have to write what you don't know. I think writing is an act of discovery, so I think sometimes as you're writing, you learn things, or books take unexpected turns, or characters do surprising things, so you can't be really rigid and think, I'm only going to write about what I know, because that could get boring. Hopefully there's that surprise that comes along. If the writer is surprised, then I think the reader will be surprised. So I think that's a good thing when you veer off into what you don't know.
The characters, shaping and forming, and you get to create. And so how did that process work for you? Did they speak to you, through you? How'd that go?
Well, I think it happens that I have to hear their voice in my head. I hear the way these people sound, and that gives me a sense of who they are. And I think characters drive stories. I think you have to have characters who want to do things and want things, and I think you have to have characters who are complicated people, who have flaws and who have positive aspects.
You mean so characters drive it more than the plot, or is it the characters that drive the plot that
I think
make
it's
the
characters
story?
that drive the plot. Characters want something and they do things, and then you have a plot. You can't superimpose the plot onto characters because, you think about the way we live our lives take certain directions because of who we are and the choices we make, and I think fictional characters are the same way. They do things and they get into trouble because of the choices they make.
So this is hugely important in your book, the characters, and shaping them and making them come to life. And so you talk about getting in their space, getting into who they are. Share that process with us a little bit.
Well, I think that writing a book for a long time, writing a novel can take a year or 2 years. It's almost as though you live with these people. It's like they move into your head. And so as I walk through my life, I'm hearing their voices in my head, and I'm thinking about them, and I'm thinking, well, what if they did this, or what if they did that, or what if they had this conversation? So it really is like you get this new family that moves into your brain for a while, and you spend a lot of time with them, and then when the book is over, they move out and a new family moves in and you start living with those people. So you hear a lot of voices in your head, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, but I also hear, and I've spoken and interviewed many authors along the way who say they were given that character, that character began to speak through them. Any of that with this book?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying about characters being surprising sometimes. I mean, there's a character in here, the protagonist's brother is a character who I think the reader won't really know how to take him for a lot of the book, but he does surprising things, surprisingly good things, surprisingly questionable things, and sometimes that just happens. You don't know that that character is going to play a certain role in the story, but they reveal themselves to be more interesting even than you thought they might be. They have, just like people in life have these layers that we didn't know they had, fictional characters reveal these layers sometimes, and you say, wow, I didn't know he was going to do that. I didn't know he was that kind of person.
In the eyes of the beholder, in the eyes of the reader, then, is how this transformation takes place, this revealing takes place?
Yeah, hopefully it happens the same way for the reader, that they're as surprised as I am and that they see these layers to the character. And of course it has to make sense on some level. It can't be out of the blue. But hopefully then that leads to the surprises for the reader.
And we should all live our lives in a state of surprise, shouldn't we?
Well, within certain limits, yes. There are certain aspects of life where you don't want surprises, but sure, the occasional surprise is a good thing.
Not a bad thing. Let's tell us, without giving out too much about the book, Cemetery Girl, tell us a little bit about the plot.
It's a story of Tom and Abby Stewart, and they're a married couple, and they have a perfect life until the day their 12-year-old daughter disappears. And when the book opens, she's been gone for 4 years, and they're facing the dilemma of, is it time to move on and accept that she's never going to come back, or do we continue to hold out hope that she's going to come back? And that's really, there's a split between the two of them about how they approach that, and that's the main conflict at the opening of the book. And not to give too much away, but pretty early on in the book, Caitlin does come back, and they have to figure out now, what do you do with this 16-year-old child who walked out the door when she was 12, and how do you suddenly respond to that? It's like having a stranger back in your house, but she is your child. So lots of complications grow out of that.
And good conflict, good.
Hopefully lots of good conflict, lots of good family conflict. It's really about a family dealing with an extraordinary circumstance, and this family trying to stay together and make sense of what it means to be a family.
And what next for David Bell?
I have another book coming out in October 2nd. It's called The Hiding Place. Same kind of story, a family dealing with an extraordinary circumstance, trying to make sense of a tragedy that happened in the past, and trying to figure out how their new family bonds will exist in the wake of that.
Cathartic in a way?
I hope so. I hope so at the end, you know, the family learns something and they're together in a way that maybe they hadn't anticipated before.
And takes the reader with them along the way.
Yes, hopefully.
On the journey. The book is called Cemetery Girl. We've been talking with author Dr. David Bell, coming to you from the Southern Kentucky Festival of Books as part of the 2012 Book Festival on Outside the Book. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
She is a rising star in the literary genre of young adult. Her name is Jackson Pearce, and she's joining us outside the book from the 2012 Southern Kentucky Festival of Books. Jackson, first of all, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
You have a new book coming out. It's called Purity.
I do.
But you write for young adults, which I would think would be a difficult place for some. Obviously, you've been quite successful with it. Why young adult?
Honestly, people ask why I write for young adults as if it's a intended thing. Like I sat down and I was like, I'm going to eat a sandwich, and then I'm going to write books for teens. But it's actually not intended at all. I just write stories, and they happen to be for teenagers. And it's something I love to do. I think part of it is because there's something so fundamentally universal about the teenage experience. I don't necessarily have a lot in common with the adult experience, maybe yet, maybe ever, I don't know. But this coming of age idea and sort of experiencing all these emotions for the first time and becoming yourself is something everybody has experienced, and I think that's why it appeals to me so much.
Okay, I get that. You don't sit down and say you're going to do this, but you also speak through a particular voice, and this voice is of a young adult.
Yeah.
So where does that come from?
I think that's just my voice. I don't think I've never intentionally thought of that voice. I've never thought I should really say that a different way, because a teen wouldn't say it that way. It's just how I write. It's just the way I tell stories. And I think most authors, that there's a natural voice that comes with it, because otherwise it sounds fake. So I think we all have sort of our thing, and that's mine.
That's beautiful. So
Yeah.
this came out, and then did you think once it was written, you went to a publisher and they said, yeah, this is definitely going to appeal to a young adult audience? Were
No,
you
I
surprised,
definitely
or
knew
you
it was teen. And what's funny is when I was in college, I had all of these friends writing the next great American, adult novel and everything. And for a long time, I was actually kind of embarrassed that I wrote teen books, because everybody else was, I'm a poet, I'm a grand novelist, and I'm writing about the American experience. And I was like, I'm writing a book about a teenager who falls in love. And I took this adolescent literature course, and this wonderful professor named Michael Riley, and he completely changed my perspective on it. And he was talking to me about Catcher in the Rye and Huckleberry Finn and all of these amazing classics that are teen stories. And I realized I had nothing to be ashamed of, and I just embraced it and ran with it. So
that voice, a lot of people looking in at that would say, things have changed so much. Young adults are not who they used to be. Fundamentally still the same?
I think they're all the same. I think that no matter when you're growing up and who you are and even what part of the world you're in, that young adult experience and coming of age and learning who you are as an individual, not who you are as a daughter or a son or a sibling or a student, learning who you are as a person is everybody does it. Everyone does it. So.
Do you know who you are as a person?
No, I'm still working on it. Do you have any ideas?
No, but I think it's an
Okay.
evolutionary process.
I would totally agree. I would definitely
Yes.
agree. And that's part of the reason I think that young adult books, now that adults have sort of opened up to the idea of reading them, we are always rediscovering who we are as people. And that's why I think they appeal to adult readers, to teen readers, to all readers, really.
Now, the new book, Purity, you says is a little controversial because
It
it's about
is.
virginity and the desire to lose one's virginity, or
Well, Purity is about a girl who she makes these promises to her mother, and it's the last thing her mother ever says to her. Is I want you to live without restraint, to love as much as possible, and to listen to your father. And then her father wants her to sign up for this purity ball, this princess ball, where she's going to have to vow her virginity to him until she's married. And she feels like she can't possibly keep the promise to listen to her father and the promise to live without restraint if she vows her virginity, because she didn't want to get married young, but she didn't want to necessarily wait till she was 35 either to have her first time. And so she decides the only way out of this is to lose her virginity before the ball, is to exploit a loophole. And so it's a story about her trying to lose her virginity in order to keep her promises to her mother. But it's also a story about God. It's also a story about loss. It's a funny story. It's a story about friendship and love, and I'm really very proud of it. And I hope people love it.
now the fact that you have an audience of young adults in particular, your audience is growing in diversity, but are you afraid that there won't be a day when there's a hard, soft book in front of them?
It's an interesting question. I think that I am, but I also recognize that part of the reason I want the actual physical book is a sense of nostalgia. I grew up with books, and to me, that is what literature is. It connects me to this grounded, real item. But I also recognize, I don't need CDs. I don't have CDs. I don't have tapes. I don't have a single CD. All I have is files. And I realize for some people that's very strange, but it's not for me, because that's fine with me. I just don't need the actual physical thing. And I think one day that will be the way books are. I think there will always be books available. I think that bookstores might start carrying fewer. They already have. I think that they might go down in popularity. But I mean, if I wanted a record, I could still get a record. I think you will always be able to get the physical book. It will just be a little bit trickier. And that doesn't necessarily bother me. I recognize that as things progress, people will change. I will always want the hardback personally, but that's just me.
And so Purity comes out. You've got several other books. What's ahead? What's down the road?
Well, Purity actually comes out on April 24th, so very, very soon. And then in September, I have the third book in my fairy tale retelling series. It's called Fathomless. It comes out September 4th, I believe. So.
And do you hope? I mean, do most authors these days hope that one day they'll make this great movie about their books?
Well, the nice thing about a movie is no matter how good or bad a job they do on the movie, it's pretty much a 2-hour advertisement for your book. So you really can't go wrong, even if it's bad. So I do hope it becomes a movie. I would love to see it become a wonderful, great movie that everybody loves. I would also just love to see it become a movie, to be entirely honest.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
Jackson Pearce has joined us from outside the book. As we continue with our young adult genre, we welcome to the program Victoria Schwab, whose latest book, The Near Witch, is out. Now, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Now, you have a connection somehow with Disney as it relates to literature.
Yes,
Help us
definitely.
understand that.
My publisher is Disney Hyperion, essentially a merger between Disney Worldwide, which is, Disney, the big Disney with the D and the swirl, and Hyperion, which is an adult house, and they combined, and Disney Hyperion is their teen branch. So essentially, it's not a Disney tie-in. Books are it's an original fairy tale. It's not a spin-off or anything, but it's the people who are on my contract and who I get to go visit, and I get to say that I work for Disney, and it's very exciting.
But you mentioned that this is young adult, but it
Yeah.
also caters to lower YA, which is lower young adult, which means we're in the 11, 12-year-old
Yeah,
genre?
definitely. It's just it has dark moments, but it's still appropriate, I think, for a middle school audience. Some of my biggest fans have been middle schoolers. I love that it's been appealing to people from about 10 years old up through, obviously, adulthood and stuff like that.
Okay, so where does that voice come from? I mean, because when you're writing for that particular demographic, you kind of have to think like they do. You have to trigger something in them that makes them want to read. So
Yeah.
where do you go to find that?
Well, I think it helps that it's a fairy tale, and there's something inherently classic and young, youthful about fairy tales, but they're still appropriate and they still are enjoyable for an adult audience as well. I think fairy tales inherently take us to a younger place. So I don't write down in any way, and I don't write younger, but there's just something about fairy tales that make them accessible.
Expound on that. What do you mean they take us to a younger place?
Well, everyone grew up, I think, in one form or another with fairy tales, whether you grew up as a child with the Disney style or whether you grew up with Grimm or some of the more classic ones. They're kind of our canon as our culture. We know them and we feel them, whether Snow White or Little Mermaid, these kinds of classic stories. And so I think when you have an archetypal quality to your story and those fairy tale qualities, it feels familiar in a very good way. You pick it up and it has a kind of a comforting, like a hot tea on a cold day kind of quality.
So what do young people in the 10 to 11, 10 to 13 age range, what you said, some of the fundamental core issues is but what else gets them?
Well, I mean, it's got witches. It's got a little fright factor. It's a little creepy. It's got a tiny bit of romance, just a little hint of it. But really, it's a mystery. It's an adventure. It's got a little bit of everything. It's hopefully going to capture their imagination and just kind of transport them for a few hours. So.
Do we like to be scared?
I do. I mean, I like to scare, I think, more than I like to be scared. I think it's the author in me. I like knowing what the secrets are, and I like knowing what the scary things are, so then I feel a little bit more in control of it. But I think we do. I think we like to be scared just enough. And Near Witch definitely has the kind of fear that has been described to me as a very childhood fear. It's that simple fear of the things that we can't see, the things that are right outside your window at night.
And yet still safe enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's the ghost story. It's that kind of around the campfire, in the bed at night. Like, it's the bedtime story scare.
And what about your characters?
I love, Lexi Harris is the main character of the novel, and the other main character's name is Cole, and it's not his real name. He's a stranger that comes to the village at night, and the next night, the children of Near, that's the village, begin to disappear one by one by one. And so he's automatically blamed as the outsider, and Lexi is the only person in the village who believes that he might be innocent. She's not sure he's innocent, but she's willing to entertain that he might be innocent. And so the two of them set out to find who is really taking these children at night.
Okay, so you talked about the reference to fairy tales and those kinds of things. They often have happy endings. Does The Near Witch have a happy ending?
I don't want to give anything away, but I'm a big believer in hope. And so I'm a big believer in hopeful endings. And so I think that no matter how dark a book gets, I'm never going to end it without hope. So definitely The Near Witch ends on a point of hope.
What's ahead for you?
My next book comes out in January, and it's called The Archived. And I think all I'm allowed to say about it right now is that it is a book about a library where the dead are shelved like books and what happens when they begin to wake up.
That sounds very intriguing, but when you say that's all I'm allowed to say at this point, do the publishers hold you back?
Yeah, I mean, it's about 9 months out from publication right now, and so we don't want to say too much too soon. I'm very excited about it, I think, and we're all at Disney are very excited about it as well. We want to make sure we keep our cards close to our chest until it's a little closer to release.
Well, the connection to Disney, do you anticipate that at some point movies will be made, shows will be made? Is that a hopeful?
You never know. Like, it's definitely two branches of the same company, but they kind of get that first right. They get to glance at everything before it goes out to other, film houses and stuff like that. But you never know. As the writer, I think I can only focus on making the books as good as they can possibly be, and then see what goes from there. But it would be exciting.
But you will continue in this vein?
I would love to. It's my goal. I have so much fun writing. Whatever I write, I think, has a fairy tale vibe to it, whether it's set in the modern day or whether it's set in a timeless place. I love that sense of the archetypal. I love that sense of the kind of classic feel to a modern story. And it's something I'd love to see more of in YA, so I'm happy to bring just a little bit of it.
Young adults. It's called The Near Witch, and we've been talking with its author, Victoria Schwab. New York Times and USA Today best-selling author Heather Graham joins us now from outside the book, here from the 2012 Southern Kentucky Festival of Books. Heather, you're a headliner here today, and we're happy to have you.
Oh, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. It's an amazing group of incredibly nice people. Everything's been wonderful. Very happy to be here.
Glad to have. Let's talk a little bit about you and writing, because I was just looking over her bio once again, and it would probably take us the whole half hour if I were to tell you all the things that she's done in her lifetime. But intriguing, you have a huge background in theater and stage. And so is that a good premise from which to begin writing?
Actually, it's funny because I think it was a wonderful premise to go into writing, which I wasn't actually expecting. When I got out of college, I did dinner theater for several years, worked with musicians. And I'm from Florida. State of Florida is a right-to-work state. So by the time I had 3 children, I actually couldn't afford to go to work because we actually weren't paid that well in dinner theater. So I was supplementing. I had some strange jobs. I was a singing, tap dancing, rib sales girl, and I've done some other pretty strange things. But when I started writing, I kind of thought, oh my God, theater was great because I'm already really good at rejection. I know how to take it when bad things happen. Because can be, sometimes people will write that one book and they're picked up immediately and it just goes wonderfully. But for most people, when they're writing, it takes a long time and it's hard and you are going to be rejected and you kind of have to slide back from it and believe in yourself and keep going. So I did get that from my theater education.
Well, but I was thinking of it more from the standpoint of when you write a scene, you can write it from the standpoint of the actors, if you will, being the characters and how they would move through a scene.
I think I do write visually. I think a lot of people do write visually, the scenes that you're creating in your own head. So I'm sure that happens too. And I also think one of the good things, and I'm not sure if it's from the education or what, but I really love getting out. I love traveling. I love to see people. And I'm hoping a lot of that, I want to think I went to school for a good reason. So part of that, yep.
What makes a good character?
I think a good character should be a very real character. And for a lot of people, doing that means not so much that you take one character from life, but perhaps you take several and put them together, or certain aspects of certain people, and put them together. For this particular book, The Unseen, I have a friend who is a U.S. Marshal, and the heroine starts off as a U.S. Marshal before becoming an FBI agent. So he was great, and he took me all through the FBI offices, the U.S. Marshal offices in Key West, because there are only 2 marshals down there. So it was very easy to go through the whole building with him, and he was great. He was a little offended that I turned him into a girl, but it was, it was okay, it worked.
It worked. So that's important then, the research and seeing the reality of a situation.
I love it. I know that people work in many different ways. I have friends who really just love to stay home and work from the internet. I really love to travel, and I also love to use places as characters. Perhaps some of that I'm from Miami, and really from Miami, and it's a totally insane, crazy city, and it's great to use. Key West is also great to use. I mean, there's so many places around the country that are so unique and do become, very important themselves because certain things can only happen in certain places.
In those places.
Yeah.
But you brought up something interesting that some of your colleagues who write like to do their traveling via the internet, virtual travel. But you like the hands-on, the smell, the sense, and I suspect
I
that's
do.
important to your writing.
For me, it is. Again, there's, the great thing about writing is there's no right way to do it. Everyone's going to have their own method, their own way. Every career is going to go differently. And I think I would say that for all the people I know who are writing for a living and doing very well at it, they might have all come from different things, theater majors, doctors, nurses, lawyers, whatever it is that somebody did, business majors, I have friends who are doing very well who did not go to college at all, but what they loved to do was read. So the most successful authors I know are authors who loved to read, and that's
Avid
where they came
readers.
from. Yeah.
What do you want when someone reads one of your books? Are you hoping they walk away or consume it in a certain way, or do you leave that to the eyes and the ears and the nose of the reader?
That's an interesting question. I think sometimes one thing with places, when I really love a place and I've used it, I hope that the readers will really want to go to that place, that I'll do that for them. I've worked in a lot of historical venues, and I'm fascinated by history, and I would love for people to want to go find out more about whatever the historical aspect was. But also I think, that's one of the great things about a book is you create what you want in your own mind with the book as well.
But the sense I'm getting from you is you're someone who likes to experience, who really is passionate about whatever it is she partakes in. And so that's something that you can bring then to your reader, that intimate look that maybe they wouldn't necessarily have.
I like to think so. I definitely hope so. I try to incorporate a lot of the things that I like to do. I have a number of books where people go diving because I love to dive. And then I think I've followed too. I do have 5 children. So a lot of the things that I've done when they were young, I did some baseball books. And I have one who's an Arthur Murray dance instructor. So that became Dead on the Dance Floor. And everyone in that studio knew who I should kill. It was fun, a lot of fun to do. And then I think that that's something that anyone out there can do too, like all the little things in your life that are weird or strange, are things that you can use, with it's always the what if, and then the what if taking it in a different direction, or the what if taking it with this person, or, the different ways that things go. So, for me, I love to use one of the old things they say is write what you know. And of course you can't, I guess you could, but for me, what I knew, at the time, a great deal was Miami, Florida, or some of the places I'd been. But you have to expand what you know if you're going to keep writing for a while. And then I think I was very lucky too. My mom was born in Dublin. My dad was born in Sterling. They brought all kinds of books with them when they came to the United States, and they were huge readers. So from the time I was young, I always had it coming at me. So that was great. And I think I would like to instill that love of reading that they gave me into other people.
Now you have 5 children. Note,
Yeah.
she said she has 5 children. So how do you write in the course of a day? Do you write something every day?
Well, yeah, I write pretty much so every day. And thanks to the kids, I do kind of feel like I'm a Dr. Seuss writer. Like I can work on a plane, in a train, in a car, going far, the whole bit. But and I couldn't do that if it hadn't been for the kids. My youngest is just graduating from college, so they're grown up now, and they're not much of an excuse at this age for not getting to sit down and work. But they honestly gave me everything, because I wouldn't have done it if it weren't for them.
If it weren't for them.
Staying home with them.
Continued success to you, and
Oh,
thank you for
thank
sharing
you.
your story.
Thank you.
We've been talking with author Heather Graham from the 2012 Southern Kentucky Festival of Books on Outside the Book. I'm Barbara Deeb. Thanks for joining us.